Padre Pio was in the confessional when a man walked in, completely distraught. This man had just received a terminal cancer diagnosis. He was weeping, trembling, begging. He said he would pray every day for the rest of his life, if God would just heal him. Padre Pio looked at him in silence for a long moment. Then he said something that left the man in shock. He said, "Son, you're treating God like you would an emergency room doctor. You only come to him when you're dying, and now you want him to do in weeks what you should have built over decades." This statement reveals a truth that most modern Christians refuse to face. If you're honest with yourself, you'll probably recognize yourself in what I'm about to reveal in the next few minutes, because the pattern Padre Pio identified affects over 80% of people who consider themselves Catholic. It's the pattern of only praying when life falls apart. Do you know someone like that? Or maybe, are you that person? The person who only remembers God when they lose their job, when they receive a bad diagnosis, when their marriage is in crisis, when a child goes astray, when their bank account is empty, when death knocks at the door. During the good years, God is forgotten, Mass is skipped, prayer is non-existent, confession doesn't even cross their mind. But when disaster strikes, suddenly the person becomes extremely devout. Promises are made, candles are lit, novenas are started, pilgrimages are planned. And the question Padre Pio asked was disturbing. Do you think God doesn't notice the difference? That man with cancer who entered Padre Pio's confessional in 1957 wasn't an isolated case. He was the rule. Padre Pio told his fellow friars that most of the people who sought him out in moments of crisis had never truly prayed before. They came to San Giovanni Rotondo as a last resort, after the doctors had failed, after human solutions had run out, after there was no earthly hope left. And then they wanted God to perform a miracle. Padre Pio didn't turn these people away. He received them with compassion, but he also confronted them with the truth, because the truth, however painful, is the only path to real healing. He asked that man with cancer, "How many times have you prayed the full rosary in your life?" The man remained silent. Padre Pio asked, "How many times have you gone to weekday Mass?" Out of devotion, not out of obligation. Silence. Padre Pio asked, "How many times did you thank God for the health you had before you lost it?" The man began to cry, not out of sadness for the illness, but out of shame for the neglect. Padre Pio said, "You lived 60 years as if God didn't exist. And now you want him to exist intensely because you need him. That's not faith, that's convenience." The statement might seem cruel, but it was merciful, because Padre Pio wanted the man to understand something fundamental before he died. He explained, God isn't a firefighter you call when the house is on fire. He's the architect who should have built the house fireproof from the beginning. You chose to build without him. Now the house is burning down, and you want him to put out the fire in minutes. Padre Pio then did something unexpected. He didn't send the man away. He didn't condemn him. He didn't say it was too late. Instead, he said, "There is still hope, not because you deserve it, but because God is merciful beyond our understanding. But to receive that mercy, you need to change, not just ask. Change." And then Padre Pio explained the difference between two types of prayer that he saw constantly. The first type he called bargaining prayer. It's the prayer that says, "God, if you do this for me, I'll do that for you. If you heal me, I'll go to Mass every Sunday. If you save my marriage, I'll pray the rosary. If you give me this job, I'll give a tithe." Padre Pio said that this prayer is problematic for several reasons. First reason, it treats God like a shopkeeper, as if the relationship with him were a transaction. I give you something, you give me something. We trade favors. Second reason, it reveals that the person doesn't want God. They want what God can give. If God doesn't give them what they want, they'll walk away. The interest isn't in God, It's in the benefits. Third reason, it's rarely fulfilled. Padre Pio saw this repeatedly. The person makes enormous promises in desperation. When the crisis passes, they forget everything. They return to their previous life as if nothing had happened. He told the story of a woman who promised to go to San Giovanni Rotondo every year if her son recovered from a serious illness. The son recovered. The woman went once. The second time, she said she didn't have time. The third, that she didn't have money. The fourth, she didn't even remember the promise anymore. 10 years later, she returned to San Giovanni Rotondo. This time, she was the one who was sick. When she entered the confessional, Padre Pio said, "You promised to come every year. You came once. Now you return because you need something again. God fulfilled his part. You didn't fulfill yours, and you still expect him to fulfill it again." The woman was in shock. She had completely forgotten the promise. Time had erased it from her memory. But Padre Pio knew, because he saw souls. He saw the unfulfilled commitments. He saw the accumulated spiritual debts. He told her, God doesn't hold grudges, but he remembers. And each unfulfilled promise weakens your ability to receive grace. Not because God punishes, but because you built a pattern of infidelity. And that pattern affects your soul. The woman began to cry. Padre Pio, with compassion, said, "There is still time to fix it, but not with more promises. You've already shown that you don't keep promises. Now you need action. You need real change. You need to start living as if God exists, even when everything is going well." This is the key that Padre Pio always emphasized. True prayer isn't reserved for moments of crisis. True prayer is constant, it's daily, it's independent of the circumstances. You don't pray because you need something. You pray because you love someone. This distinction is fundamental. Padre Pio compared it to human relationships. He said, "Imagine you have a friend who only seeks you out when they need money. They never call to see how you are. They never show up during the good times. They never demonstrate genuine interest. But when they're in trouble, they call you crying, asking for help. How would you feel?" The answer is obvious. You would feel used. You would feel that the friendship is fake. You would feel that the person doesn't care about you. They only care about what you can do for them. Padre Pio said, "And do you think God doesn't feel the same? He doesn't have human feelings, it's true, but he knows the intentions. He knows when he's sought out for love and when he's sought out for self-interest. And that makes a difference." One of the friars asked Padre Pio, "But then doesn't God answer the prayers of those who only pray in times of crisis?" Padre Pio's response was surprising. He said, "God does answer because he is merciful beyond our understanding. But he answers in a different way. He answers by giving the person what they need, not necessarily what they want. And often, what the person needs is to learn the consequence of neglecting God in the good times. This doesn't mean that God punishes. Padre Pio was very clear about that. He explained, it's not punishment. It's a natural consequence. If you don't take care of your health for years, you can't complain when you get sick. If you don't invest in your marriage for years, you can't complain when it falls apart. In the same way, if you don't cultivate a relationship with God for years, you can't expect instant intimacy when you need him. Prayer is a spiritual muscle. If you don't exercise it, it atrophies, and when you need it, it doesn't respond as it should. Padre Pio saw this in the pilgrims who came to San Giovanni Rotondo. Some people arrived with a mature faith, cultivated by decades of constant prayer. These people, even in the midst of the worst tragedies, had a supernatural peace, an unwavering confidence, a capacity to surrender everything to God without despair. Other people arrived completely destroyed, not only by the tragedy itself, but by the total inability to deal with it spiritually. They had no internal resources. They had no connection with God. They had no foundation to lean on. The difference was not in the severity of the problems. It was in the spiritual preparation. Padre Pio would say, "The moment of crisis is not the time to build the foundations. It's time to lean on them. If you haven't built them before, you will collapse along with everything." Once, a doctor from New York asked Padre Pio why he insisted so much on constant prayer. The doctor argued that many people lived good lives without praying regularly. Padre Pio responded, "You are a doctor. You know the human body. You know that a person can live years ignoring their health, eating poorly, not exercising, not getting checkups, and it seems like everything is fine. Until one day it's not, until the illness that grew silently finally manifests. With the soul, it's the same thing. A person can spend years without praying and it seems like everything is fine, but the spiritual illness grows in silence, and when it manifests, it's often already too severe." The doctor understood the analogy perfectly. He went back to New York and started to pray daily. Years later, he wrote a letter to Padre Pio thanking him for that explanation, which saved not only his soul, but also his marriage and his family. He told the story of two mothers who lost children in the same week. One was a woman of prayer. She had prayed the rosary every day for over 30 years. She went to Mass daily. She went to confession weekly. She had a deep and consistent spiritual life. The other was a nominal Catholic. She went to Mass on Christmas and Easter. She never prayed at home. She never went to confession. Religion was a social formality, not a lived reality. When tragedy struck, the two reacted in completely different ways. The first mother cried. She suffered. The pain was immense. But in the midst of the suffering, there was peace. She was able to say, "I don't understand God's plans, but I trust Him. My child is in good hands." The second mother had a total collapse, not only emotional, but spiritual. She couldn't accept it. She couldn't find meaning. She couldn't get up. She spent months in deep depression, questioning the existence of God, cursing life. Padre Pio said, "The difference is not that one loved her child more than the other. The difference is that one had built a house on the rock, the other had built on the sand. When the storm came, one remained standing, the other crumbled." This image comes directly from the Gospel. Jesus used it to explain the difference between those who hear His words and practice them versus those who hear and don't practice. Padre Pio updated it for the modern context. The difference between those who pray constantly and those who pray only in crises is the difference between the house on the rock and the house on the sand. When the storm comes, and it always comes, you discover which one you are in. A Capuchin friar who lived with Padre Pio for over 15 years reported something impressive about this distinction. He said that Padre Pio could identify, just by looking at a person, whether they had a constant prayer life or not. It was as if there was a different light around those who prayed daily, a protection visible to spiritual eyes. Padre Pio explained this once. He said, "When a person prays constantly, they build a spiritual fortress around themselves. The angels surround them. The grace of God forms a protection. Not that they become immune to problems, but when problems come, they have defenses, they have resources, they have supernatural help." And he continued, "When a person doesn't pray, or prays only sporadically, this fortress doesn't exist. They are exposed, vulnerable. When the storm comes, there is no protection. It's like a soldier going into battle without armor." A pilgrim asked Padre Pio why some people seemed to have more problems than others, why some families were constantly affected by tragedies, while others lived in relative peace. Padre Pio's answer was revealing. He said, "It's not always a matter of deserving. Sometimes the holiest suffer more, But there is a pattern that I see frequently. The families that pray together, that keep God at the center, are rarely completely destroyed by the storms. They suffer, yes, but they remain standing. But the families where there is no prayer, where God is remembered only in emergencies, those frequently disintegrate when the crisis arrives. He gave a concrete example. 2 families from San Giovanni Rotondo lost children in World War II. It happened to many families at that time. The tragedy was the same, but the reactions were completely different. One family had a tradition of praying the rosary together every night. They had maintained this practice since the children were small. When the news of the death arrived, the family gathered. They cried together. They prayed together. The mourning was intense, but shared. Faith sustained them. Years later, they still talked about the lost son with love and hope of meeting him again in heaven. The other family did not have that foundation. Religion was nominal. Prayer was non-existent. When the tragedy arrived, there was no structure to deal with it. The father gave himself to alcohol. The mother fell into deep depression. The siblings drifted apart from each other, each dealing with the pain alone. The family disintegrated completely in a few years. Padre Pio commented about these 2 families. The difference was not the tragedy. There was what came before the tragedy. One had foundations, the other had nothing. This observation, it echoed countless times. Throughout Padre Pio's 50-plus years of hearing confessions, he saw the pattern clearly. Those who built a spiritual life in times of peace, they survived the storms. Those who built nothing are swept away by them. And the saddest thing, according to Padre Pio, was that people only realized this when it was too late, when the storm had already arrived, when the destruction was already happening. He'd say, "If only these people had sought me out 5 years earlier, when everything was going well. If they had started building their fortress before they needed it." But no one thinks of God when they're happy, only when they're desperate. There was one exception that Padre Pio mentioned with admiration. Every so often, someone would seek him out, not because they were in crisis, but because they wanted to prepare for possible future crises. A young woman, newly married, went to San Giovanni Rotondo in 1953. She didn't have any serious problems. Her marriage was good. Her health was good. Her finances were stable. She told Padre Pio, "I came here because I know that life won't always be like this. I know that storms will come, and I want to build my faith now, while I have the time and peace to do it." Padre Pio was visibly moved. He said, "In all my years here, you are one of the few people who have come for wisdom and not for desperation. May God bless you abundantly for this spiritual maturity." And then he spent hours with her. He gave her guidance on how to build a life of prayer. He taught her spiritual practices. He recommended specific devotions. It was one of the longest consultations he granted to someone without an immediate crisis. 20 years later, that woman faced the worst storm of her life. She lost her husband and 2 children in a car accident. She returned to San Giovanni Rotondo. Padre Pio had already passed away 5 years earlier, but she went anyway. She knelt before his tomb, and she thanked him. She told the sisters who were with her, "He prepared me for this 20 years ago. When nothing bad had happened, he taught me how to build fortresses. Without that preparation, I would not have survived what came." This story perfectly illustrates what Padre Pio was trying to teach everyone. Constant prayer is not paranoia. It's not fear of the future. It's not living expecting misfortunes. It is wisdom. It is preparation. It's building defenses while there's peace to build them. The second type of prayer that Padre Pio identified was the opposite of the bargaining prayer. He called it the prayer of relationship. It's the prayer that doesn't ask for anything specific, that only seeks the presence of God, that gives thanks for what it has before asking for what's lacking, that accepts God's will, even when it doesn't understand it. Padre Pio said that this prayer is rare, but it's the only one that truly transforms. He explained, most people come to God with a list of requests. They want healing, they want money, they want success, they want God to solve their problems. Few come simply to be with Him, to know Him better, to love Him more deeply. And the paradox is that whoever comes without asking for anything receives much more than whoever comes asking for everything. Padre Pio told the story of a man who visited him in San Giovanni Rotondo, not to ask for anything, but simply to thank him. The man had a simple life. He wasn't rich. He didn't have worldly success. He had health problems, financial difficulties, family worries like anyone else. But he came only to say, "Padre, I came to thank God for everything He has given me, for my wife, for my children, for my faith, for my health, even if it isn't perfect, for my life, even if it isn't easy." Padre Pio was silent for a moment. Then he smiled. He said, "You are the first in many months who comes here without asking for anything. And for that, you will receive more than everyone else." The man was confused. He hadn't asked for anything. How could he receive? Padre Pio explained, God doesn't need you to ask in order to give. He already knows what you need. What He wants to see is gratitude. It's recognition. It's a heart that loves Him, regardless of the circumstances. When He finds that heart, He pours out grace without measure. That man returned home without having asked for anything specific. In the following months, his life changed in ways he didn't expect. He didn't become rich. He didn't become famous. But he found peace. He found joy. He found purpose. Things that no money can buy. Padre Pio used this example to show that constant prayer is not about getting things from God. It's about building a relationship with Him that transforms everything. Now, the question you might be asking is, but how do I start praying constantly if I've never had that habit? Padre Pio gave practical guidance for this. The first guidance was to start small. He said, don't try to pray 2 hours a day. If you've never prayed 5 minutes, just start with 5 minutes, then 10, then 15. Prayer is like a muscle. It needs to be developed gradually. Many people fail because they try too much in the beginning. They make impossible promises. They say they're going to pray the full rosary every day when they've never managed to pray 1 decade. And when they fail, they give up completely. Padre Pio warned against this. He said, God prefers 5 constant minutes than 2 sporadic hours. Constancy is more important than quantity. It's better to pray little every day than a lot only once in a while. The second guidance was to have a fixed time. Padre Pio recommended that the person choose a specific time of day for prayer. In the morning when waking up, at night before sleeping, at lunchtime, any time, as long as it was fixed. He explained, when prayer has a time, it becomes part of the routine. You don't need to decide if you're going to pray or not. It's already decided. It's like brushing your teeth. You don't wake up thinking about whether you're going to brush them or not. You simply do it. The third guidance was not to depend on feelings. Padre Pio was very clear about this. He said, you won't always feel like praying. There will be days when prayer will seem arid, useless, mechanical. Pray anyway. Prayer doesn't depend on how you feel. It depends on your will. He compared it to marriage. There's no couple that wakes up every day feeling butterflies in their stomach. Mature love isn't constant feeling. It's constant decision. It's choosing to love, even when you don't feel like it. Prayer works the same way. Padre Pio said that he spent years without feeling anything during prayer, years of spiritual aridity, years of darkness. But he never stopped praying, and it was exactly in that period that his faith grew strongest. He said, "When you pray without feeling anything, you are proving that you love God for himself, not for the comforts he gives. And this purified love is the most precious thing there is." One of the friars asked Padre Pio how he managed to pray so much, even during periods of spiritual dryness, how he found the strength to continue when it seemed that God was silent. Padre Pio's answer was profound. He said, "I don't pray to feel God. I pray to be with God. If he chooses to hide himself, that doesn't change my obligation to seek him. A fiancé doesn't give up on his bride because she's being quiet. He remains present, remains faithful, keeps waiting." And he added, "In fact, the periods of dryness are the most important. It's when we discover if we truly love God or just love the consolations he gives. Many people abandon prayer when it becomes difficult. These people have never truly loved God. They loved what they felt when they prayed." Padre Pio compared this to the saints who faced dark nights of the soul. He mentioned Sainte Thérèse of Lisieux, who spent the last 18 months of her life in complete spiritual darkness, without feeling God's presence, without consolations, without any sensible certainties. But she continued praying, continued believing, continued loving. He would say, "If Saint Therese could do it, you can do it." She was a fragile young woman, sick, dying of tuberculosis. But her faith was stronger than any feeling. Her prayer didn't depend on emotions. It depended on decision. This directly confronted modern thinking. Padre Pio perceived that more and more people were treating prayer as an emotional experience. If they felt peace, they continued praying. If they felt empty, they stopped. Prayer had become spiritual entertainment, not a relationship. He warned, "You have been raised to seek sensations. Everything in modern life is about how you feel. But the spiritual life doesn't work like that. True prayer often feels like nothing, and that's exactly what makes it true." A college student who visited Padre Pio in the 60s confessed that he had stopped praying because he no longer felt anything. Padre Pio responded, "Do you also stop eating when the food has no taste? Do you stop breathing when the air doesn't smell good? Prayer is the food of the soul. It's spiritual breath. You don't do it for pleasure. You do it because you need it to live." The student tried to argue that it was different. That prayer was optional. Padre Pio cut him off. "Optional, and you think the soul can live without communication with God? Yes, it can, but it will wither, it will weaken, it will die, little by little, and when you realize it, it will be too late." This conversation changed that student's life. He went back to praying, not because he felt like it, but because he understood that it was necessary. Decades later, he testified in Padre Pio's canonization process. He said that confrontation was the most important moment of his spiritual life. The fourth guideline was to link prayer to gratitude. Padre Pio recommended that, before asking for anything, a person should spend time being thankful for what they already had. He would say, "Make a mental list of all the blessings in your life, the health you have, even if it's not perfect, the family you have, even if it's not ideal, the roof over your head, the food on your table, the faith that brought you here. Be thankful for each of these things before you ask for anything else." This practice, according to Padre Pio, completely transformed a person's perspective. He explained, "Whoever gives thanks realizes they have already received much, and whoever realizes they have already received much becomes less anxious about what is still lacking. Gratitude is the antidote to despair." The fifth guideline was to accept God's will. This was perhaps the most difficult of all. Padre Pio said that true prayer always ends with, "Thy will be done, not my will, thy will." He explained, you can ask for what you want, you can express your desires, your fears, your needs, but in the end, you need to surrender everything to God. You need to accept that He knows more than you do, that His plans are better than yours, even when they seem worse. This is the party that most people resist. They want God to do their will. They want Him to be a genie in a bottle who grants wishes. They want to control the outcome. But true prayer is the opposite of control. It's surrender, it's trust, it's saying, "I don't know what's best for me, but you do. Do what is best, even if I don't understand." Padre Pio told the story of a woman who insistently asked for the healing of her sick husband. She prayed novenas, made pilgrimages, lit candles, did everything she could. And at the end of each prayer, she said, "But thy will be done." The husband died. The woman was devastated. But in the midst of the pain, she felt an inexplicable peace, a certainty that, despite everything, God was in control, that her husband's death, as painful as it was part of a bigger plan that she couldn't see. Years later, she understood. If her husband had lived a few more years, he would have witnessed family tragedies that would have destroyed him. He would have seen his children go astray. He would have suffered in ways that death spared him. God's mercy, which seemed cruel at the time, revealed itself as supreme kindness over time. Padre Pio said, "God sees the whole movie. You only see the current frame. Don't judge His plans by what you can see now." Now, before I finish, I need to speak directly to you. If you recognize yourself in the pattern I described, if you're someone who only prays when life falls apart, I'm not here to condemn you. I'm here to wake you up. Because the truth is that this pattern can be changed at any moment, regardless of how many years you've lived like this. Padre Pio received people who had spent decades without praying, and he never said that it was too late. He always said, "Start now." God's grace doesn't have an expiration date. Sincere repentance doesn't have an age limit. Conversion can happen at any moment, but it needs to happen now, not tomorrow, not when the next crisis hits. Now, because if you wait for the next crisis, you'll repeat the same cycle. You'll pray desperately while the crisis lasts, and you'll forget God as soon as it passes. The change needs to happen in the good times, when you don't need anything urgent, when life is calm, when there's no despair forcing you to seek God. That's the true test of faith. Padre Pio said, anyone seeks God in the desert. The true believer seeks Him also in the garden. If this content touched you in some way, if you recognized yourself in the descriptions and want to change, then you understand the value of what you just received. This kind of teaching about constant prayer is rarely preached. Most churches just say, pray more, but they don't explain why sporadic prayer is problematic. They don't confront the pattern of seeking God only in emergencies. That super thanks button down below, it's a way to support the continuation of this work. It's a way of saying, these truths need to keep being proclaimed. It's a way to participate in the mission of transforming nominal Catholics into practicing Catholics. Every single contribution allows more people to hear this message, more people to be awakened, more lives to be transformed. If you feel in your heart that this is important, don't ignore that feeling. That's the Holy Spirit speaking to you. But regardless of financial support, what really matters is what you are going to do now. Let me give you a practical challenge. For the next 7 days, commit to praying for just 5 minutes a day. Just 5 minutes. At the same time, every single day. Don't wait until you feel like it. Don't wait until you have spare time. Don't wait for the perfect circumstance. Just do it. And in those 5 minutes, don't ask for anything. Just give thanks. Mentally list 5 things you are grateful for and say to God, thank you. If you can manage to do that for 7 consecutive days, something will begin to shift inside you. Not immediately, not dramatically, but something will change. And that small beginning can blossom into a life of constant prayer, a life where you don't need crises to remember God, because He is already an integral part of your everyday life. Padre Pio guaranteed that this simple practice had the power to transform lives. Now, before you click away, I need to ask you a question. Be honest with yourself. Do you pray regularly, or only when life falls apart? Write in the comments one of these 2 answers, regularly or only in crises. I'm not asking this to judge you. I'm asking because verbalizing the truth is the first step to changing it. If you wrote only in crises, don't be ashamed. The majority of people are in the same boat, but the difference between you and most is that now you know. Now you've been confronted. Now you have the opportunity to change. And if you wrote regularly, congratulations. You are building a house on solid rock. Keep going, strengthen it, deepen it, because the storm always comes, and you're going to need those foundations. And remember the words of Padre Pio: pray, hope, and don't worry. Worrying is useless. God is merciful, and He will hear your prayer. But He also said, pray always, not just when you need to. May Our Lady, Mother of constant prayer, intercede for you. May she, who prayed her entire life, not just in moments of glory, but also at the foot of the cross, teach you to do the same. And may Padre Pio, from heaven where he is, continue guiding souls like yours towards a life of true, constant, and transformative prayer. The peace of Christ be with you, and may the grace of a life of prayer accompany each of your days.